This is the Adios Pro 3, and it has undergone a variety of little tweaks from top to bottom. Will it be death by 1,000 cutouts, or has Adidas really made the ultimate long-distance shoe? 8.74 miles and 97% humidity today, although fortunately the temperatures were relatively balmy at 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Going through what I'm going to call my speed shoe testing protocol. I had 2 miles at marathon effort, followed by 2 times 1 mile at threshold effort, and 4 strides, so I could literally put the Adios Pro 3 through the paces. Now, before I give you my thoughts on this shoe after just this first run, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that I bought myself. No one sent it to me. No one's paying me to make this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Adios Pro 3. First, let's go over what's new over last year. For me, the big story is that there's more foam. So there's an extra 0.5 millimeter of stack height in the heel, going up from 39 to 39.5 millimeters of stack height in the heel. But they've also changed the drop from 7.5 millimeter drop to 6.5 millimeter drop. So now we've got 33 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot, and it's definitely an amount that you can tell the difference. The price for all this extra foam, however, is that the shoe is heavier this year. Last year's Adios Pro came in at 7.5 ounces for a men's size 9. This year it comes in at 8.1 ounces. In addition to the increased weight, there's some increased price as well. Last year's shoe started out at $220. This year's shoes bumps up to $250, which puts it in line with a lot of the other super shoes that are out there, but it's still a price increase nonetheless. We still have Cellular Mesh 2.0, which is a very strong yet breathable, flexible material that works really well in Adidas race shoes. But some of the underlays that give that foot a little bit more structure within the shoe, that has changed to be a little less tiger stripey than what we had last year, and ends up being a little bit more understated from at least a visual impact perspective. There's also been some changes to the padding that's back here. There seems to be some sort of like glittery, shiny application that's going on in these bumper pads on the heel to keep everything in place. And then now there's this kind of like weird flappy thing that's in the back here that for me looks a little bit sloppy, and in application, the whole heel kind of feels just a little bit sloppy as well. Moving to the outsole, there is a very similar pattern as we've seen in the Adios Pro 2. We've got that very thin but striated layer of Continental rubber that's on here, which provides a surprising amount of grip and traction. And there's also some changes toward the heel. We've almost got like a Mod Podge-like clear layer, which provides a little window into some Adizero text. Now the tongue here also seems to have undergone some changes. I feel like it's a lighter, thinner material than last year. And in fact, it reminds me a lot of the tongue that was on the Prime X from last year, although there is full coverage tongue in the Adios Pro 3. But it did remind me of the Prime X in that, like, putting my foot into the shoe, it took a lot of kind of fidgeting and finagling and flattening of the tongue in order to get it sit straight down. Now, in addition to the changes in stack height, we have this year Energy Rods 2.0, which is the first year that they've really tweaked this system since the initial launch of the Adidas Adios Pro. And this year it's supposed to be a little bit more fine-tuned to the needs of marathon distance runners. Now, with all those changes laid out, let's talk about whether it actually makes for a better shoe. Now, the short answer to this is yes, absolutely. I think this is a better shoe over last year's, which I think was a pretty tough thing to do because the Adios Pro 2 was one of my favorite racing shoes from last year. The main difference is that it's changed where the landing pad is on the shoe. Now, last year, it seemed to be a little bit more kind of Alpha Fly-esque in terms of there being like this large, round, bulbous section where you landed kind of like on the pads of your feet. This year, it seems like the landing pad is a little bit further. So I feel like I'm landing a little bit more towards the back part of the pads of my feet, and I'm feeling a lot more foam underfoot right where kind of like the front of my arches are. And so I feel like that changes the way that my foot kind of naturally wants to land as I'm running in this shoe. And so I feel like I'm hitting more midfoot and then rolling through a lot more fluidly. And it's actually turning out to be a really nice sensation for me, even though I tend to prefer shoes where I am landing right at the pads of those feet and like basically on the toes. The other thing that I'll note is that it seems to me like the rocker or the geometry of the shoe where it starts to curl up happens a little bit more gradually this year than it did last year. I'm not sure if maybe there is an actual geometry change or if it's just the fact that I'm landing a little bit more midfoot and rolling through a little bit more fluidly that's doing that. But it feels to me to be a little bit more of a smooth foot strike where I'm getting a lot of that Light Strike Pro rolling into the carbon and then pushing off with a nice powerful pop at the end. The thing that is still the same from last year to this year is that there's that Light Strike Pro, which is one of my favorite super foams. It's very different from the other foams that are out there, like the FF Turbo in the Metaspeed Sky Plus and the Zoom X that's in the Vaporfly Next Percent, in that it doesn't quite squish as quickly or rebound quite as quickly. It kind of reminds me of like kind of the bounce that you get from like bubble gum that you've chewed for a really long time. It absorbs impact well and then it brings it back really quickly. It's a really nice sensation that I thought was fantastic at marathon effort and really sang for those threshold effort miles that I also had in there for today. But I did find it to be a little bit twitchy. The shoe is very sensitive to exactly how your foot is hitting the ground and kind of how clean your mechanics are. So I felt like I was getting a really positive response when I really focused on clean running mechanics. And when I got a little bit more tired and things got a little sloppy, I felt like the shoe kind of penalized me at the same time. And so I think that's where a little bit of that twitchiness at marathon effort is coming from. And I especially felt that at threshold pace, while it was really nice when I was trying to kind of push that effort level a little bit higher to be able to really reach in and get that performance out of the shoe. I think that the shoe requires a little bit more attention to be paid to exactly how your foot is hitting the ground in order for you to get really the most out of it. Now, when it comes to anything faster than threshold pace, I did do a couple of strides today just to kind of test it out at something that's a little bit closer between 5K and mile race pace. And that's when I really started to feel like the extra stack height and the extra weight of the shoe started to kind of make themselves feel apparent. Now, it's a race shoe, and compared to like your standard daily trainer, this is obviously going to do much better. But when it comes to like getting the peak performance out of the shoe and what the shoe is really for, it's really geared towards those threshold workouts and racing fast half marathons and marathons. And so that brings me to the final question. Is this really the ultimate marathon shoe, as Adidas claims on its website? And I will say, this is a fantastic marathon racer. It's going to certainly be one of the best racing shoes for 2022. But before I can really decide if it's the ultimate, I do think that I need to do a little bit more testing, especially because of the way that the Adios Pro 2 treated me last year. Initially, I absolutely loved the shoe, did a lot of threshold mile repeat workouts in that shoe. But over time, what I found is on long runs, the way that the energy rods were placed, I felt like they were starting to kind of poke up at the bottom of my feet, and the pads of my feet were really starting to bother me. I suspect, my hypothesis at this point is that by changing kind of like the main landing pad, moving that from the pads of the feet a little bit further back towards the midfoot, I think that I'm going to be rolling onto the pads of the feet a little bit more, so I won't be getting as much pressure on that point that ended up being a pain point for me with the Adios Pro 2. Right now, I'm thinking that this is probably going to be my Chicago Marathon shoe because I really do feel confident in how this shoe is going to hold up over the mile. So if you have any other questions about the Adios Pro 3, let me know in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. I'd love to talk to you guys in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?